Thank you everyone for joining us. We're so excited you're here. We know it's, everyone's busy, so we're grateful for you to take an hour out of your day and come and talk with us about accountability. It is definitely one of our most popular topics, and we get lots of questions. So excited to see a full house today. For any of you who are not familiar with Slingshot 25, just let me give you a quick overview. We are a business consulting company and we are all corporate America refugees. We've all worked in corporate America for about 25 years before starting Slingshot 25. And we started this company because we want to help people. We've been in the trenches where you're at doing the work and solving some of those messy business problems. And so that's why we're here. We specifically focus on training and coaching in the areas of leadership development and change management. And one of the things that makes us really different is that we challenge people and leaders to think differently about how they lead, everything from their responsibilities to their behaviors. And so that's one thing that we really focus on in all of our programs. But we also want our clients to walk away with practical tools and resources that can be applied from day one. So that's just a quick overview about us. Our products and services can really be bucketed into these three areas: change management and communication, team performance, and leadership training and coaching. So after years of creating these solutions in corporate America, Jackie Pelland and Courtney Smock have done everything from leading the the largest acquisition in aerospace and defense to creating clean sheet performance management programs for 30,000 employees. So they've done it, they know what works, and that's why all of our products and services at Slingshot 25 are custom. So when we work with businesses and companies, we develop it all in-house. And because we know that your unique challenges and needs are specific to your business. So that's how we partner with companies all across the country. We are going to be talking about how we can partner with you later in this session, but I just want you to keep this in mind. We are now scheduling leader and employee accountability training for 2025. So we love coming into companies and working with teams about this topic. So if you think that you might be interested in this, take note, because we are going to be talking a little bit about this after the webinar is over, and you can see the contact information, but we will be sharing that again at the end. So keep that in mind. If you do not follow us on social media, please do. We have a ton of free resources that we provide daily on social media. It's all on our website. We do articles. If any of you are familiar with Jack Chat, Jackie's leadership series, they're short 3-minute videos, and every one of them has some self-reflection questions. So you can really get some usable information out of each of those videos, and they're fun. So check those out if you haven't already. We also do a podcast called Our Shotcast. Again, we focus on leadership and training topics and try and make them really relevant to what's happening. So check those out. And then we also have tons of free events like webinars. So visit regularly, search our hashtag serious work can be fun, because that's what we like to do with the serious business, is have a little fun along the way. So please do that, and let us know how it's going. Incorporate them into your team meetings, into your leadership offsites, and let us know what you think. So without further ado, I am going to hand the microphone over to Jackie Pelland, and she'll get us started.
Thank you, Kim Garrett. Oh my gosh, accountability. That's what we're going to talk about today. And Kim already said, I'll just reiterate, we get asked about this all the time. As a matter of fact, just case in point, I'm headed off to work with a client tomorrow to do an accountability workshop for them tomorrow morning. It's on everyone's mind, and I kind of get it. I kind of know why. But the place I want to start us, if we look at the next slide, I want to start you with a number. 29%, and what this number is representing, because I'm guessing you'll relate to this right away. So I'm just going to set the stage with a piece of the challenge that we're up against today. which is 29% of the world's largest organizations. When a study was done with the world's largest organizations, 29% of them said that accountability was actually listed as one of their company's core values. And as I looked at the participant list, I know I've got some HR and strategy people listening to us today. And so you guys know what it takes to build those core values. Some of you might not think too much about them as you just kind of fly past them in the lobby every day on your way to work. But companies actually spend a fair amount of time really thinking about who they are and what they put into the world, what's important to them. And for 29% of them to say that a core value is accountability says something to us that think about organizations and how organizations work and the culture of organizations. So what we're hearing from that number is organizations are serious about accountability. They really, really want it. But then we have the next problem, which is this. It has turned accountability into what I often call a corporate weasel word. And if you've not heard that term before, if you've listened to me before, you've heard it. But if you haven't heard that term, a corporate weasel word is kind of exactly what it sounds like, which is it's kind of weaselly, meaning it sort of scurries about, but it doesn't really affect anything. Although I think if you let a weasel loose in our building right now, it would affect a lot of things now that I think about that. But a corporate weasel word is a word that has kind of been drained of meaning. It's weaselly. We see it all the time, but we kind of stop thinking about it. It doesn't arrest us. It doesn't make us stop and think accountability, like what really is that? And what do I have to do to achieve that? But if you're feeling sorry for this little weasel of accountability, I can assure you that it's in good company. There's a lot of corporate weasel words out there, which I'm just asking us today, and we can kind of laugh at this, right? We think serious work can be fun. We can laugh at these things and kind of roll our eyes and have that kind of sense of knowing about. I know you all know what I'm talking about. Any word that appears on a Successories poster is probably a corporate weasel word. Again, meaning that we see them so often, we toss these words around so often that we've drained them of meaning. So I'm going to ask you to do. I'm about to turn this over to Courtney, who's going to, start talking about some of the lessons that we have for you today. But to get you ready to do that, I want you to look at this word afresh. I want you to look at and think about, I want you to get accountability in your head, and I want you to pretend you've never really thought about it before, that this is all new. So I'm going to turn them over to you, Courtney Smock, so that you can talk to these people who are thinking about accountability with sort of a fresh perspective. So take it away, Courtney.
Fantastic. So let's start the fresh perspective with a definition. Our definition of accountability is a commitment to be responsible for consequences. A commitment to be responsible for what happens as a result of what I do or don't do. And this does take a pause. Like if I have lean people on the call, I just put the word accountable and responsible in the same sentence. Sorry, not really. Responsibility and accountability can be together. I can be responsible, do things, and I am also the person that understands and owns the consequences of what happens. But we have responsibility without accountability. I just do the thing, and the consequences, not my problem, not my influence. I don't control it. I'm going to give you an extreme example of responsibility without consequences, responsibility without accountability. I love this phrase. Have you ever heard the phrase malicious obedience? Malicious obedience is when people are responsible. They're told to do things, but they don't feel like they really can affect the consequences. And so they do just exactly what they're told, even if it hurts someone or hurts the business. And so when people are acting with malicious obedience, they're being responsible. They're doing the things, what I told you to do, but they don't really care about the consequences. In fact, if the consequences hurt you, I'm going to do it anyway. There's an example. I have a friend who works in a union shop, and they have leadership that asked them to do something, and they knew it was going to have a negative consequence to the business. And they did it anyway because they felt like they had no choice. They weren't empowered. They were responsible. They did the thing. And when they did it, it made a mess that was going to have to get cleaned up. And they were being maliciously obedient, right? They're taking responsibility and saying, you know what? Not only am I can't fix the consequences, good luck with that. You can have accountability without responsibility. I call that leadership. Working through others, empowering other people, saying, you know what? I'm going to give you the power to do it. I'm going to set the expectation with you to do it. And if it wins, I'm going to say, good job on you. If it's successful, well done, team. And if it doesn't go so well, I'm going to say, what did I do as a leader to let that happen? Accountability without being the person who pushes the buttons and does the things. That's leadership. And we have to work through others to make those things happen. So just sort of parsing out this definition a little bit, I want to move into, there's ingredients in this, right? There's two different pieces here. Really, fun, fascinating fact. We asked you all when you enrolled, like, hey, what makes accountability hard? And a lot of you took time to give us a phrase or a paragraph about what makes accountability hard. And what popped up, these ingredients, accountability works when leaders create an environment for it. I can't do this stuff, right? I just have to be someone as a leader who sets up the environment so other people can get the things done. You have to have that. You have to have leaders understand that's their part. And you have to have employees in that system who will take ownership to do their part and make it work. And what was funny in the feedback is everyone gave their, what's wrong with accountability? What are you struggling with? There became this sort of tug of war, like accountability. When we say it doesn't work, our tendency is to say, well, we're lacking accountability because of all those other people who won't do their part. I look outside myself. If I'm a leader, I'm like, I need employees to be accountable. And if I'm an employee, I'm saying, hey, I need a leader who will free me up to do the work. And we look outside. We look outside. We look to others. One person said, you know what? I think I'm part of the problem. One person did that, said, I think the accountability, like maybe I could do more. Everyone else who commented, their comment was kind of about other people need to step it up around here. And that's normal, right? Because we don't look at accountability as what it truly is, which is it's a dance with two people doing their part, a leader and an employee. And so we're going to spend the rest of the talk. I'm going to talk about the leader side of that. Jackie's going to talk about the employee side of it.
Yeah, I would just like to stress, Courtney, if I can jump in here, that
we
did see that in the comments, and we expected it.
Yeah.
And this is not a lecture to make you feel bad about yourself for saying that, hey, it's not, one of these things, right? It's not about that. It's really, really normal to look around and say someone else is the problem with accountability. That's really normal. And as a matter of fact, you're right. Someone else is the problem with accountability, and so are you. So we're just asking in this next 45 minutes with us to go with us to see both sides of this equation, because in order to really get accountability right in your organization, we need everyone to see both sides of the equation.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you. All right. So let's take a peek at that. We're going to look at 3 things that kill accountability from a leader perspective, 3 ways employees can put themselves on the hook. The first one, the challenge for leaders. So I love to use this analogy, and it just so happens, I don't know if you guys are watching the news at all, but a bunch of monkeys escaped a zoo and a lab in South Carolina. Did you guys all see this? So I think something like 43 monkeys escaped. They found 25 of them. There's 18 monkeys on the loose in South Carolina right now. When I teach about accountability in the challenge for leaders, I always use an analogy of a monkey. Like, imagine that accountability is a monkey, and it's just like bouncing around your organization. And what happens is your employee comes in with an issue and they have accountability on them. You want them to have responsibility for the consequences of what they're doing. And as leaders, our challenge is we do a bunch of things that actually invite that monkey down to crawl down off that person and onto our lap, onto our desk, onto our work. And we're like, oh, we asked that employee to do these things, and somehow I end up with a monkey. So we're going to talk about 3 things that we do that we don't even know we do that kind of makes a home for the accountability not to lie with the person, but to lie with us. The very first one is helping. Helping. This is one of our, we teach this in our Truth of Leading Others class. Help is the sunny side of control. It's the fastest thing we do that takes accountability off our employees. It is well intended. It's for good purpose. But when we do, we have people, we say, hey, here's what I expect from you. Here's the tools and resources you have to do the job. And the moment that they struggle, they can't solve the problem. They're not getting it done fast enough. You've done it before and you have some advice. We take that issue that they have and we say, hey, let me help you with that. And we take the monkey and we put it on our lap. I teach, some of you on this call have heard me teach this story before. The best illustration I have for this is when my kids were little. They're all grown now, but when they were little, my husband works at Quaker Oats and he worked an alternative weekend schedule. And that meant on Monday, Tuesdays, he worked. Wednesdays, Thursdays, he was off. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, he worked again. And the other week it switched. And during those time periods, it meant that I got the kids ready for school some days and he got the kids ready for school some days. And what I started to notice on my days was that my son would come in, maybe he's 3 at the time, all sleepy-eyed. He'd come in when it's time to get ready for school, and he'd just sort of shut his eyes and put his hands up. Dress me, Mom. Dress me. And I was really puzzled by this because I'm like, he's 3. He should be dressing himself. So I had a conversation with Mr. Smock. And I said, hey, what goes on here in the morning exactly? Because Cooper is like thinking I'm going to dress him. What's going on there? And what did he say to me? Darren Smock said, well, I'm helping him. I'm helping him. And we do this all the time with our work with our people. I'm helping them. Who is he really helping? He's helping himself because it's faster. It's done right. It's done once. It's easier. I can control it. Help is a sunny side of control. When I get in the habit of dressing my people, answering their questions for them, doing their work, giving them advice, who's controlling that? Where is the monkey? Where is the accountability? In that case, sometimes we're not even just robbing them of accountability. We're actually stealing the responsibility. We're doing the work. We're doing the work. And the employee's like, what am I supposed to do here? We want them to be accountable. We want them to do the work, but we also want to control things. We don't want to have risks. We don't want to have mistakes. We don't want to do it over. Help is a sunny side of control, and it's an accountability killer. Because so long as we can't let go, trust our people, empower them, give them the tools and resources, work through them, all that responsibility is on us.
Courtney, you mentioned the word stealing. We're stealing their responsibilities. I would also add to that, we're stealing their development. So if stealing their responsibilities doesn't make you squirm a little bit, I certainly hope the idea of stealing their own personal development makes you think twice about this.
Yeah. So what do you do about it? What do you do about it? I'll show you. Nothing. Nothing. Get out of it. Step back. Check your why. Ask yourself, why am I getting in there? And if it is because I'm afraid, if it is because I don't trust them, if it's because it's like really challenge your why you're doing that and clean it up. Clean it up. Instead, ask yourself, how can I choose to show up in a way that keeps them empowered, keeps the monkey with them, keeps them responsible? I can help them, but I want to help them in a way that's empowering. And sometimes the most empowering, helpful thing you can do is just step back and see what they know, see what they can figure out, see how much they can grow. That's how you fix it. Okay, the second one, accountability number 2. How many of you have cut someone off? And how many of you have been cut off in traffic? I don't know how many people are calling in from Cedar Rapids, Iowa. We don't have a ton of traffic, but you've been cut off, right? And you guys can't talk to me, but it is in the classroom all the time. Like, what do you say about people who cut you off in traffic? I mean, sometimes the expletives flow, right? These people are, you say things about them, you say things to them, you attribute a lot of, you decide if they're smart or stupid, you decide how good of a driver they are, you decide all these, all kinds of things about them. What's wrong with them? And we do this, right? It's the moment that someone makes a mistake, cuts us off in traffic, we start attributing things about their goodness, how well they perform. Now, flip it over. What happens when you cut someone off in traffic? What do you say about yourself in that moment? Oh, oops, sorry, pardon me, wasn't paying attention, right? Like, there's nothing wrong with me. I just, the road was slippery, or I got distracted, or my sunglasses were blurry, whatever, right? This is called the fundamental attribution error. And what it means is the way our brains work is when someone else makes a mistake, we decide there's something wrong with them. And when we make a mistake, we decide there's something wrong with the environment. The truth is, right, and how we fix it is it is in the environment. We have more opportunity to fix the environment. From an accountability standpoint, we don't say what happened. We don't say who did it, right? We say, how did I let that happen? What is going on in the environment that someone would do that? Do they have clear expectations? Do they have tools and training? Do they know what to do? Do they understand the consequences? Have I been clear enough? Have I supported them enough? And yeah, maybe they really don't know enough right now. And one of the things that's missing from their environment is enough training. So yeah, I have a responsibility as their leader to give them more training so they do it better. But I also have to fix the expectations, the tools have to work, the accountabilities have to line up, like all that stuff that affects how they perform as a leader. That's my job. I've worked with clients, lots of them, where they'll say things like, we've had 3 different people come through here in the last 18 months and fail at that job. We just can't find the right person. It's not a person problem. It's an environment problem. No matter who you put in there, they're not being successful. You got to look at the environment. Do they know what's expected? Do they have the tools and resources? And are they being held accountable and being followed up and given feedback about how they're doing? A more simple analogy is think about gardening, right? If you plant a flower, if you plant a weed, I don't know, plant a vegetable, if it grows or not, you don't blame the plant if it doesn't grow, do you? You don't say, wow, I must have got a bad batch of seeds. Now, sometimes you do, but before you get to that, you water it, you get it in the right sunlight, you fertilize it, you weed, right? You fix the environment so it has a chance to grow. Our people deserve the same thing, right? You can't hold people accountable in an environment where they never had a chance to grow. Then you're just replacing people. So accountability sounds like, how did I let that happen from a leader perspective, not what's wrong with them. That's all I want to say about that. Jackie, anything you want to add?
No.
And then accountability killer number 3, I do this with a sigh. We disguise and dance around the performance feedback. I love Kim Garrett's little dance around the mop here. I'm just going to leave this here for a second. If you're on this call, you have done this probably. It is so hard to have honest conversations with people when they're not performing, when they're not meeting expectations, when things aren't working out the way you thought. It's easier to just, what is it? Hope is a strategy. Maybe it'll work itself out. It's easier to say, oh, they should have known this by now and I shouldn't have to talk to them about it. It's easier to have a conversation and just not actually say what you really needed to say because when you looked them in the eye, it was too hard to be honest. We are human beings. We get our work done with our relationship with each other. And anytime we have to have a conversation that's tough and it might hurt that person, we're going to dance around. We're going to avoid it. We're going to not do it. And so in the accountability framework where people have to have expectations, it only works if we're willing to tell people where they're meeting the expectations and where they're not. And this is a very hard thing. It's a skill, right? It's a skill. So what we have to learn, the only thing we can really do is get better at having those conversations. We have to learn how to have tough conversations. We have to recognize that there's not a silver bullet. Like we used to teach different brands of tough conversations, tough crucial conversations. I don't know, sparkly. There's a million versions, right? We've taught them different ones over the years. We've done tough conversations here, wildly popular because everyone wants an elixir. We want a silver bullet that makes having the very tough human interaction of being honest with people when things aren't meeting their expectations easier. So we teach a class. We've actually rebranded our tough conversations class into a class that we now call conversations that move people forward. And the reason we brought in that explanation is honestly, as a leader, the only interaction that people get with you are the conversations they have. So we brought in that class to say, you know what, we're going to teach leaders how to have all kinds of conversations, especially the tough ones. And then we have tools in that class because you can have the need, but you got to get prepared for that because it is a psychological threat to have a tough conversation because it is a relationship that could be damaged and you're not going to want to do it. So being prepared, thinking through it, having a goal in mind, anticipating what's going to happen, they're really important to give you a shot. And we teach you how to do that in our classes, right? That we teach you and then we give you the tools. So after the class is over, you can go back and get yourself ready. And you will have 5 minutes of courage, 15 minutes of courage, depending on the conversation, what you need to have it. And it will be probably awful, right? It being prepared, having learned it, it doesn't make a tough conversation easy. Afterwards, you might still feel like crap, but you can get better at it. And having the skills, the tools, and the practice of courage over and over again, it's a huge thing that's needed to have accountability in your organizations. Because if we just hope and pray and avoid, people don't actually know what they're not doing. And so they have no chance to fix it or get better. And we have to embrace, I think the last thing I'll say then, before I give it to Jackie to talk to you about the employee side, is from a tough conversation perspective, we want to embrace this role that we like to call the loving critic. As a leader, yeah, it's hard to have tough conversations. But if you care enough about your people, you love them enough to criticize them, to point out areas where they have opportunity, to point out areas where you see behaviors that aren't hurting them, how can you not? How can you not? How can you let someone you care about march boldly on a path that's not serving them? I have to be brave. I have to be honest. I have to find a way to say what needs said because I care about them too much not to. Right? That's the leader side. Jackie, what about the employees?
Well, let's talk about the employee side. Thank you, Courtney Smock. Before we move into the employee, Courtney did a fantastic job describing 3 of the major challenges that leaders face when trying to build accountability. There's a lot more than 3. And if we had a lot more time with you today, we would talk about more than 3. And if you join us in a classroom at some point, you can hear a lot more what Kim Garrett was talking about at the beginning of the session today, that we do deeper training on this subject. If these things are feeling like we're on the right track with you and you want to hear more about that, make sure you talk to us later about how we can go deeper in this subject for your teams. But here we are at the employee side. This is the me side of the conversation, isn't it? It's the me side. And I recognize a lot of those of you who have joined us today, and I know many of you are leaders. In fact, we asked you if you were a leader when you signed up for this. We like to know kind of a mix of do we have leaders coming? Do we have employees coming? And it turns out we have a lot of both. But at the end of the day, you are all on the employee side of this relationship at some point, aren't you? I mean, the whole who's leading and who's following keeps changing as you go up the organization. So even if you're a senior leader in your organization, you report to someone. And so you are on the employee side. Every single one of you is on the employee side of this relationship, as well as some of you being on the leader side of this relationship. I also want to point out, before I would be remiss to say, we do read your comments that you send into us as you join this event with us. And many of you mentioned that one of the challenges that you have is expectations, setting expectations. We actually left that out of this webinar. It's a kind of an obvious one. Maybe it's not, maybe I shouldn't use the word obvious, but it is a really big one. You know, all of accountability has to start with clear expectations. And again, if you want to hear a little more about the challenge of setting expectations, we talk a lot about that when we get into really workshopping with your leaders around how to see the expectations in your workplace and to set those expectations clearly and how to do that. Let's dive into what the challenges are for leaders. There are three distinct things that the challenges for employees. There are three distinct challenges that we're going to cover today. Again, there's more, but I think these are the three most interesting ones, and we chose to share these with you today. This is the idea. The me side of this equation, the employee side of this equation, is how to put yourself on the hook. Like, how do you go, back to the definition that Courtney gave us of what accountability is. How do you put yourself on the hook to not just do your work, And Courtney introduced the idea of malicious obedience, which can happen, but many of us just kind of we're not that far. We're not really maliciously obedient, but we just kind of go through the motions. We just do our work and we feel like we can't really have much effect on things. But this is about putting yourself on the hook to be responsible for the consequences, to be responsible and really caring about the work that you put into the world, the effect that it actually has, to find more of a relationship with that. And that's what we're going to talk about here. And the first thing we're going to talk about is you got to know yourself. And we're not going to get into any, sort of age of Aquarius kind of stuff here, but just know who you are and what you put into the world. We're going to give you kind of a simple way, a simple technique. We're doing some really complex work of really knowing who you are and what you put into the world. Then we need to talk about, we're going to have to talk about the F word here. We're going to have to talk about failure, because someone who is accountable, who says, I will remain responsible for the consequences of what I do, what I put into the world, it's not going to work every time. And in order to get really good at accountability, you've got to get really good at knowing how to deal with failure, because it will come. And then the other F word that everyone loves is also listed here, which is the feedback that's going to come at you as a result of, distinctly as a result of failure, but it's going to come at you one way or the other. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, how to get more comfortable with that. And then we're also going to talk about the importance of self-reflecting, of how to get really good about looking at yourself and finding opportunities to learn and grow just by self-reflection. So let's get started with the first one there, of knowing who you are. I love to ask this question. I think it's a great way to think about the contributions that you make in this world. I want you to imagine that tomorrow, today's half over, so let's go with tomorrow. Tomorrow is your day. Tomorrow is the holiday. November 14th is the holiday that celebrates the work that you put into the world. I'd like to know what kind of decorations I'm hanging, what's the theme of the party that I'm going to have, what's the signature cocktail that I should blend. Like, what am I celebrating if I celebrate the work that you put into the world? I want you to think about that. You put something into the world, and here's where I don't want you to go looking. Don't go looking in your job description, please. I want you to start with you. I want you to start with, and I'm going to give you some questions. They're not on the screen, so you might want to note these down. They're simple questions, though. I always ask these 4 questions when I'm working as a coach with clients who are kind of trying to work through this. The first question is, what do you make? What do you make? And if you're not in manufacturing, where you actually assemble products and tangible things, this question still pertains to you. What do you make? Do you make some sort of a service? Do you make events for people? Do you make moments where people experience something new? It may be invisible, but it's very, very real. What do you make? Maybe you actually make a product and you could say that. But what do you make? I want you to think about that. Not, again, don't go looking in your job description. I want you to think for yourself, what do you put on this in this world to do? What do you make? The second question is, how do you make it? How do you make it? I don't mean like, the instruction manual for the things that you make. I'm talking about, think about it as like your style, your unique approach. You heard from Kim Garrett that serious work can be fun. That's our style. That's our unique approach. She also mentioned to you that when we're making development moments happen for leaders, which is what I suggest I make for this world, when I make those moments, the way I do that is by inviting leaders to think differently. That's different maybe than how other people go about making that particular thing for the world. So that's your second question. Think about your style, like your approach to the thing that you make. The third question is, who do you make it for? This is the one that most people think is a really easy question, and it turns out for most people to be one of the hardest, especially if you're working in an organization, and my guess is all of you are. When you're working in an organization, you just kind of think about, well, who do I send all my email to? Who are the people, and who's my bosses, and who's my internal customers? We like to talk about customers in the workplace. Yeah, that's a clue. That's certainly a clue. But I want you to get even more finer tuned. Like, what wavelength are the people on that are really your customers, if you will? Who are the people that when they see your work, they will delight in it? What kind of people are they? Because I've got some bad news for you guys. I hope this doesn't burst your bubble today, but the fact is, you're not for everyone. Not everyone is going to like you. Not everyone is going to see your value. Not everyone is grateful when you walk in the room. But the good news is, that's perfectly okay. It's perfectly okay. And as a matter of fact, I would say, if you think you're for everyone, and if you think you are for everyone, everyone celebrates you, everyone benefits from you, then I might suggest you're for no one. Because if you are sanitizing yourself, dumbing yourself down, if you are trying to make yourself generically palatable for all, you're probably putting one of your weaker selves into the world. I want you to think about what kind of people celebrate the work that you put in the world, and I want those people to be in mind for you when you think about your contributions. Those are the people that you serve. The final question that I have for you is probably no surprise, which gets at purpose, which is, why do you do this anyway? Why do you make this? Why do you make what you make? Why do you use the approach that you do? What's the purpose behind all of this? So those are the 4 questions I want you to think about when you think about your contributions. Who are you? What do you make? How do you make it? Who do you make it for? And why do you make it? And I want you to reflect from a personal perspective. Now, of course, we get it. Like, you've also got to put this work into the world and then see what happens. See how people, what insights they gain from your work, how they interact with your work, and what could be better. So you need to take sort of your own reflections and put it into the more social world. You need to put it into the world that you live in, and you will observe and you will make adjustments to what you make and how you make it and who it's for. But I want you to start just clean sheet with those questions. Who are you? And so then as you put your work into the world, it might not work. It might not please people, which leads us to this next point. Is to be truly accountable, is to embrace the idea that this might not work. That you might have an envision of the cupcakes on the left, but you end up with the cupcakes on the right. This can happen. It happens to all of us. and to get comfortable with that. Now, I'm not suggesting that you get that you celebrate failure. Some people have even gone that far as to celebrate failure, and I'm sure they have their reasons for that. I'm not really asking you to get happy about failure. I think failure, being averse, like having failure aversion, perfectly normal. It's okay to not want to fail. The challenge comes in failure avoidance. Because when you avoid failure, you play it too safe. You'll look to the left and the right and be quick to blame people when things go wrong. I've done it, and I know you've done it too. So again, in honest self-reflection here is, how do you think about failure? How do you think about this might not work? And I've got 3 little mini lessons in here for you. I just want to quickly tick through those things that you see on the screen here, because I think you might find some interesting perspective around this. The first you see there is tension versus stress. And you'll probably find them in a thesaurus right next to each other, but there's some difference here, and let me describe this. Tension is what I call a healthy relationship with failure. Like, it's like, wait for it, right? Like, this is kind of exciting. The tension, imagine, of like watching a scary movie or just a dramatic movie, or just waiting for the moment. That's a healthy relationship with, this might not work. We'll see what happens. Tension is great. Tension is, in some ways, the spice of life. And then there's stress. Stress is what I would call an unhealthy relationship with the things that we cannot control, right? It's an unhealthy relationship with the possibility of failure. And we get all wrapped around like the things that we cannot control, and we get fixated on those, and we stress ourselves out. So I want you to think about, how do you relate to the things that could happen? Do you obsess about the things you can't control? Or do you lean into, with tension, the possibilities that might happen, and you might end up with the cupcakes on the right, and you're going to be okay with that? The second thing is, we are all narrative thinkers. We all do. Humans think this way. You think this way. I think this way. We all think this way. We tell ourselves stories about what's happening around us. Courtney was talking about the environment. We are all just creatures of our environment. Everything that happens in the environment creates a response in us. Something happens as a result of the environment that we're in. And we tend to tell those stories in sort of narratives. And we get really good. We get really good at controlling those narratives and starting to tell ourselves narratives that make the world more palatable for us, but maybe a little more removed from reality. So I want you to start noticing the kind of stories that you tell yourself around failure, around the possibility that this might not work, the possibility that you might put work into the world that isn't fully appreciated by someone else. What kind of story are you telling yourself about that? I'm just asking you to notice it, and then start thinking about how that is helping you or not helping you.
Yeah, Jack, the one thing I'd add there, that I think one of the stories that comes out the most about putting our work in the world is the stories we tell ourselves about sunk cost.
Yeah.
Like, we're just so scared to spend our time and energy on something that we're waiting for a decision from on high, or we're waiting for a direction, or we're just waiting for something, because we're so scared that if I take a step forward, it might not pan out. And the truth is, taking a step forward is always going to be good for us, because we're going to learn something, right? Challenge yourself on, if you're not taking that step forward, what is the story you're telling yourself about what you're really waiting for? And is it real?
That's right.
Might not be as real as you think.
Sunk cost also brings up for me, thank you for that point, Courtney, and I'm sure you can all relate to that. It also, the idea of sunk cost also brings up for me this idea of doubling down, right? Just because you've always done something that way, you want to be really consistent, and you don't ever want to appear like you've rethought something and changed your mind. If that's you, right, we encourage you to notice that that's your habit, and that's getting in the way of greater success for you. And then the final thing is humility. I'll tell you, there is no one that has ever taken full accountability, have been, just an accountability superstar, without releasing some of their insecurities and the stories that they're telling themselves about themselves, of that I have to be perfect, that I can't ever look like I'm wrong. And keep in mind here, when I say humility, we have a definition of humility that we use here at Slingshot 25 that I think is fantastic, which is humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's not about, I deserve to fail. I truly am an imposter. It's not that. It's not that. It's not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. It's not being so self-absorbed that you can't shake it off, that you can't keep moving forward. Yeah, this didn't work, but I'm going to stay focused on the people that I serve. And it's not to say I have to abandon any feelings of like, anxiety or even, just, failure, the feeling of, oh, geez, I don't feel very good about myself right now. That's going to happen. That's okay. But it's how quickly can you shake that off and get yourself focused back on the people that you serve. Remember, this is why it's so important. What do you make? How do you make? Who do you make it for? And why are you doing it? That you're able to get refocused on that through a sense of not being so self-absorbed. Now, when you fail, and you will, we all do, and you're going to succeed, of course, sometimes, but when you fail, you're going to get feedback, aren't you? It is one of the most perceived, the greatest perils of accountability, which is if you put yourself on the hook and it doesn't work out, you're going to get some feedback. If you put yourself on the hook and it does work out, you could get some feedback. And anyone who tells you they love feedback is probably a little bit disillusioned about something. It's not about loving feedback. That's not really even, it's sort of that's kind of a red herring, if you will. And you've all seen this, right? This idea of the gift of feedback. We get a little sideways on this, and we want to offer a bit of a different perspective about this idea that feedback is a gift. I would say it this way. I want you to be mindful of the giver-focused nature of feedback. In other words, I don't want you to just automatically accept all feedback as a gift. I want you to first be aware of the giver-focused nature of feedback. And here's what I mean. And I think about this. I'll give you some of the categories that I think about when I think about the giver-focused nature of feedback. I think about this idea of a gift. Some people, their nature is to re-gift things. Like maybe they received some feedback that they were sort of stung by, and now they like to pass it on to others. This might be maybe somebody parked in the wrong place in the parking lot and was scolded for it. And so now whenever they see someone park, they're like, you're not supposed to park there, So they're a re-gifter. You might have someone who gives a gift, a feedback that's really more of their own tastes in gifts. You know how some people actually give gifts like that, like real birthday gifts and stuff, and they'll give you what they want most. So there's that. There's the giver's taste in gifts. So they recognize a shortcoming in themselves, and so they want to give everyone else that feedback. Like maybe someone who knows they talk too much, and so they're always on the lookout for others who also might talk too much, and you're going to get that, even if that's really not an issue for you. You're going to get that kind of feedback from them because their spidey senses are really tuned to that. There's then what I call the airport gift. You know what I'm talking about? Like, oh crap, I went on this fabulous vacation. I forgot to get something for my friend, and so you dive into the airport gift shop. And this is what I call feedback that doesn't have a lot of prep time associated with it. Never give feedback without preparing to give feedback, because you'll end up giving an airport gift of feedback. And then there's the worst one of all, which is the flaming bag of poo feedback, which is what you get when feedback is anonymously dropped on you. Now, I know anonymous feedback needs to happen for some reasons in organizations, but I just want you to know, just be careful, because that's where the flaming bag of poo might just show up on your front porch and goodness knows what's in it. So what do we do about this? If you're going to hold yourself on the hook and be accountable, you're going to have to get really good at feedback. And here's what I suggest you do is I want you to get really discerning. I don't want you to just send all those gifts back and say, Jackie Pelland told me that, feedback is really just giver focused and I should ignore all of it. There's a nuanced message in here. I am telling you that feedback, a lot of people are not very good at giving it, but we're also not very good at receiving it. And so before you send all of that back, I want you to look for and learn how to mine feedback for things that resonate with you, that you think that is something that I can learn and grow from. But what I don't like about this idea that you're expected to accept all feedback like it's a gift is it doesn't really give full acknowledgement to the feelings that you have, maybe feelings of embarrassment or awkwardness or disappointment or sadness. Like, let those feelings are fine. It's okay to have those feelings when you receive feedback, when there's been a failure and you're in some tough feedback. All of that's going to come. That's normal and okay. What I ask you to do then is to rise up from that, look at the feedback and see what kind of gifts you can find in there. And the other thing, Courtney mentioned this idea of loving critics. This is where, again, answering that question of who in the work that you put into the world, like, who do you make it for? Those are the people that you want to pay most attention to their feedback. Some of you who are Brene Brown followers know she quotes Theodore Roosevelt a lot when she talks about the man in the ring. And she talks about, don't take feedback from the people who are up there in the nosebleed seats on your life. Take feedback from those who are in the ring with you, who are getting bloody with you in the ring, who are in the fight with you, who care about what you're doing and care about the work that you do. Those are the best places to get feedback. Another tiny lesson in feedback is on the next page here, which is about your own feedback. A really great way to get better at, I don't know if anyone gets really good at receiving feedback. Another great way to help improve how you're able to take in feedback and find the gifts in it is to, I'm going to say, almost like cut people off at the pass a little bit here, which is do your own feedback. Your own self-reflection is always on. You don't have to go ask someone for it, try to get it from somebody, open up a 360 and go through all that rigmarole. Self-reflection is always on. But I suggest that you do wise self-reflection, deliberate self-reflection, effective self-reflection, highly skilled, if you will, self-reflection. So feel free to take a screen grab of these self-reflection questions. They're my gift to you. These are some just really great sort of wide open, how is my driving kind of self-reflection questions. Think about, when has your performance not met your own standards, let alone others? What have people told you need to improve on? And I want you to, a couple of words of advice that I always give on self-reflection is do it by yourself. I think there's a reason for the word self-reflection. Do it alone, or maybe with a skilled coach. Because what we tend to do in self-reflection, when we don't get the value out of self-reflection, it's usually because we have started defending our actions. Remember those narratives I told you about? We start defending our actions and protecting our ego. And so we actually double down on our internal narratives, on the stories that make things more palatable and make us look better. We become the hero in our stories. I want you to do the best you can to check all of that. There's no reason to lie to yourself. That's like cheating at solitaire. You really didn't win when you do that. Like, don't cheat at solitaire. Reflect alone. Be honest with yourself. Because then when someone does give you feedback, you'll recognize the things of value in it. You'll be able to recognize and you'll know what to do with it. It also helps you get better, by the way, at seeking feedback. Leaders say this to me all the time. I can't get feedback, honest feedback from anyone unless it is the flaming bag of poo, anonymous feedback. Here's a trick. I'll just give this. It's kind of an aside. If you do this kind of self-reflection and you know what you're working on, if you do this work, then you can ask someone, you can go to someone, maybe even a direct report and say, hey, I'm working on, list what you're working on. What advice do you have for me? Don't use the word feedback. That's that F word we want to avoid. Just ask for advice. People are far more likely to give advice than they are to give feedback. All right. In summary, I hope you picked up on this. This is where we started and we'll end here. We started by saying, we noticed in your comments that you all kind of point at the other person, except for that one person who said, no, I need to get better at accountability. It's mutual. You're right. You're all right. It is the other person, but it's also you. Accountable cultures understand this. They know that you have to have both leaders who will create the conditions for accountability and employees who will do the work to put themselves on the hook and stay on the hook and own that. Both must be present. But I will say this, leaders, it's your job to go first. It is your job to go first. Organizations hold more power in this agreement. Organizations hold more power to establish the environment. And of course, leaders are the face of the organization. Leaders, I'm asking you to go first on this. I'm going to put a period on that sentence. And then I'm also going to say, if you're an employee out there and your leader isn't doing this, your organization isn't doing this, do it anyway. Take responsibility anyway. We often quote Cy Wakeman, who says, stay in joy or leave in peace. There is no third option. Don't let yourself off the hook on this. Just do it anyway. Take accountability, even if it's hard, even if it doesn't feel validating in your environment. I want you to do it anyway, because that's the person that I know you want to be. So leaders, go first. Organizations, go first. Employees, do it anyway, even if your organization isn't doing it. So if you guys want to hear more, I hope there was something of value in this for you. We had to kind of do a down select of the things that we wanted to share with you, because there's so much more to say about this. And we know, I quote Tom Peters all the time when I say, organizations never drift towards greatness. You will not drift towards greatness. It takes people owning this, doing something about this, taking an action every single day to build accountability in their organization. So if you are interested in having us come in and work with your organization, when we say we're scheduling accountability, employee and leader accountability training, we do. We have sessions on this where we unpack even more. We dive even more into the themes that you heard today. We can dive even more into those. And we can also even do workshops where we really get you into those expectations and have you pressure test your expectations and plan for how you communicate them and who's meeting them and who's not and why and what feedback have you given and how do you give good feedback? How do you prepare to give good feedback? All of that, we can come and help you assess those things deeper and do more and broader training in your organization. So we'll leave you with this. To remind you to come and find us online, connect with us, come and see what else we have on our website. Follow us. We've got a newsletter. Kim Garrett writes a fantastic newsletter, and she posts things on LinkedIn and amazing articles and insights that we love sharing with you. This is what we love to do. And you can just give us a call or email us. We love hearing from you. So with that, I think I'm about ready to say goodbye, but I'll turn it back over to my other partners here and see if there's any last words from them. Courtney, any last words for us?
I'm just reading the comment that said that was the fastest hour of the day. So I would agree. Fantastic. I don't have anything to add. Just thank you.